You're watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on Fox 35 News Plus as we speak with the candidates for Florida governor in the campaign this year. Pleased to be joined today by Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings, Democratic candidate for governor. Mayor Demings, we appreciate you joining us today.
Honored to be here.
First, just talk to me about the decision to run and also to stay on as mayor while you're running this campaign. I imagine that's a lot.
It is quite a bit, but I'm honored to be in the race, honored to have the opportunity to run. The decision was made based upon a lot of prayer and supposition, but a lot of people across the state of Florida kind of elicited my goal to get into this race. And so here I am. I'm running because I care about working class people here in the state of Florida. I care about the high cost of living that we're having to deal with now. I care about the preemptions that's happening by the state of local governments. I care about trying to be the solution to some of these challenges: housing affordability, health care challenges within our state of Florida. And so here I am. I'm offering up the sum total of nearly 45 years now of public service to help come up with the solutions that working class people are looking for.
And we're going to get into a lot of those issues that you just mentioned. But I do want to just start by asking, as we talked, you are still a mayor of Orange County right now. That brings a lot of responsibilities in itself. And I'm just curious what the balance looks like between those duties and, kind of what the campaign looks like for you right now.
It's a very busy period of time. I have chosen to honor my commitment when I ran for re-election in 2022 to be the Orange County mayor. My term will end in December of 2026, and so the next governor will be sworn in January of 2027. So during this period of time, I've got the balance of both responsibilities. It'll be a challenge. As we get closer to the primary and then the general election, I will still be focused on being the mayor. But today I spend about 30 to 40% of my time each day kind of working on the obligations associated with being mayor. The other 70%, 60% of my time I spend campaigning.
And let's talk about affordability. I know that was one of the things you mentioned. That's the thing that we see in poll after poll is the top issue on voters' minds. We've heard it described as an affordability crisis here in the state of Florida right now. And I'm curious your take. This is a question I've asked every candidate on how we got in this position. How did we end up here where we are dealing with these high costs and this affordability crisis in Florida?
I believe we got here because we lost sight of the plight of average people. We have people who are sitting in high places, billionaires, wealthy, who have been influencing those who are being elected. And because of that, we're out of balance. The focus has been really on the ultra wealthy and not the working class people here within Florida. Florida is the fastest growing state within the union. Last year in 2024, the last numbers that we have whole numbers for, the state of Florida grew by 364,000 people, a net at least of 364,000 people. That means almost 1,000 new people moved into the state of Florida each day. That's very challenging. Here within Central Florida, we're the benefactors of much of that growth. That is probably the number one challenge that I have to deal with, is managing the growth in Orange County and how that growth impacts the entire region here. And so I'm very adept at coming up with solutions in those types of environments. And I'll take that experience into the governor's office.
When it comes to housing costs, housing supply, how do you kind of find that balance as Florida continues to grow, but also making sure we don't overdevelop?
We have to have adequate growth management plans, land use plans, and this is an area where unfortunately the state of Florida has been preempting the local governments from that authority to be able to make decisions for themselves. We're closest to where the people are. These issues are issues that I wrestle with every day. Housing affordability has been one of those. we could not depend on Tallahassee to come up with the solutions for us, so we had to create our own solution here in Orange County, in which we created our own locally controlled housing trust fund, which we said that we would commit $160 million over a 10-year period of time. Through public-private partnerships, we can address those issues. We are addressing those issues by building workforce housing. We've done that by changing some of our regulatory oversight. We've done that by creating this housing trust fund and leveraging those dollars against private sector investments where we have local financial institutions investing with us. Other corporate partners have been joined us in this effort, from Universal Resorts of Florida to Disney. They have stepped up to the plate, and we have these housing development projects around the county. And then we're working with nonprofits like Habitat for Orange and Osceola County, in which we have taken our surplus lots and put into the mix and making those homes available for working class people. And all of this is just to address the lack of funding that is coming from the state of Florida.
We've heard a lot of talk about property taxes, and we know the state, at the urging of Governor DeSantis, looking to eliminate those, roll those back. We're still not sure what that exactly might look like. But what is your take on that? And also, how do you address the concerns of local governments across the state when it comes to potential loss of revenue?
Depending upon what the state does with property tax reform, will really determine the total impact on local governments and individuals. Many of the proposals that have been put on the table at this point could range from billions of dollars to multiple billions of dollars. What I am doing about it is I am very active with the Florida Association of Counties, and I chair a committee, the Finance and Taxation Committee, that has been looking at this issue now for a while. But I also chair a special select committee that will work to respond to whatever comes out of the legislature. That is an ongoing, tedious process. Who knows? Until the legislative session is over, we won't know what this property tax reform will look like and whether there will be a statewide referendum to go on the ballot to create a constitutional amendment or not. But in either case, the 8 to 9 to 10 proposals that we have seen, the Florida Association of Counties has some responses to each one of those in terms of how it will impact local governments. What I can tell you is that I don't believe that there's any scenario in which the state of Florida can totally eliminate property taxes.
What about for homesteaded properties only? Does that fall into that? You think that wouldn't be feasible?
What we have heard in terms of the dialogue so far out of committee weeks is that they might carve out law enforcement related costs or first response, including fire and EMS, but even that isn't a guarantee yet. Most of the local governments' budgets are for first response, for public safety. And if you take public safety off the table, that puts a lot of pressure on local governments to do everything else with, because local governments, a portion of their budgets are enterprise funds, they're restricted funds, they can't be used for general local government delivery of services, and because of that, that could have a direct impact, a negative impact on how we deliver services. After all, many of the services the government delivers to the people aren't services that we can directly charge people for. Some people cannot afford the cost of providing the social services that we do, for example, dealing with homelessness. The state of Florida has mandated that each local government has a plan of action to eliminate homelessness within their communities or deal with it without providing any adequate funding to be able to do that. That mandate, that unfunded mandate, is one of those things that is going to cost local governments significant dollars in order to be able to address it.
So we were recording this the day after Governor DeSantis delivered his final State of the State address. After that, we heard from Democratic leaders of the House and Senate who said they believe the focus on property taxes is misplaced, and that the focus when it comes to affordability should be more on property insurance. Do you believe there are additional property insurance reforms that need to be taken at the state level?
There's no question. There needs to be property insurance reforms. We need to hold the insurance companies, the property insurers, the casualty companies accountable. If they're making money in Florida, that money really needs to stay here within Florida. However, because of fraud, sometimes there are people who file fraudulent claims against the insurance companies. The state of Florida needs to step its game up in terms of doing investigations where there's fraud involved. Then when we talk about even healthcare costs, there are significant challenges there. My style of leadership is one where I have over time created these different thought leaders, task forces, to come together with industry leaders and just average persons who may not have a particular monetary investment in the issue, but they're concerned about it, to come up with solutions of how we can better address these issues. I will do that as the governor of Florida from time to time. If there are tough issues that we need to wrestle with and come up with solutions, it takes both the private sector working with the public sector and the philanthropic sector to come up with meaningful solutions of how we will go about addressing those issues.
A few minutes ago, you talked about local control. This is something that you would know about as Orange County mayor. I know you've expressed concerns about kind of things, from the state that have stripped that away in some ways. Can you talk about the ways that you have seen local control kind of preempted by the state, and what you would want to see as governor to restore some more independence to the local governments across Florida?
As I said earlier, one of the biggest challenges that I have as a local mayor is managing the tremendous growth. Here in the Metro Orlando area, we remain the #1 tourist destination in North America. Not only do we have to provide services for the increase in our permanent resident population, but also the visitors. And because of that, sometimes I think the state forgets about that. What the state of Florida has been doing is taking away the ability of local governments to create its own land use management related issues. They have really ceded a lot of the influence to developers who are making money, who are profiting, as opposed to listening to those local governments. I'll give you a specific example. Here in Orange County, we have been working for several years to create a comprehensive growth management plan called Vision 2050. We transmitted that plan to the state of Florida using the rules that the state had created for us to follow. And then the state in the nth hour changed the rules on us and preempted local governments from some of the land use related issues. Senate Bill 180 was the primary bill that passed that took away some local control. There's not one of my Board of County Commission meetings that I have where there's some citizens who come in, and I can tell you that's typically one of the most contentious areas for our residents, is understanding how they will be impacted if they own land, if they live in their homes and surrounding development. We see some environmental concerns, we see traffic congestion, we see negative impacts on our preservation lands, our water bodies. And so we really need to manage those issues, because when we have these weather phenomena in Florida, unfortunately it often results in some catastrophes in which there's flooding that occurs throughout the region that impacts all of us and displaces people from their homes. It creates emergency situations. And so we do have to be proactive in how we manage when we begin to build out. And so the state of Florida with the preemptions is putting us in a position where we have an unfair disadvantage in how we're being able to be held accountable. at the local level for coming up with a solution, because the state of Florida is really not leading in that regard.
We should note, when it comes to some of those things from Senate Bill 180, we know the state Senate has filed a bill to potentially walk back some of those things that, like you said, have really stepped on the toes of some of these local governments and their comprehensive plans. So that'll be something for us to watch in this legislative session. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about immigration enforcement, illegal immigration enforcement. What would that look like under a Demings administration? We know under DeSantis, the state has been very proactive about it. They've gotten a lot of attention nationally for the steps that have been taken. What would that look like in a Demings administration?
First off, I was a law enforcement officer for 37 and a half years. I took multiple oaths that I would support, protect, and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida. And when I took those oaths, I took them very seriously. So I believe in immigration enforcement. However, what we are seeing now has gone beyond just immigration enforcement. It is depriving people of their liberties, their rights. They are using force in situations where force is not necessary. As a law enforcement senior official, I had to make certain that I held my law enforcement officers accountable to treating people with dignity and respect. Unfortunately, what we're seeing now is a condoning of misbehavior and heavy-handedness in law enforcement. Under my administration, what you will see is that I will support the men and women in law enforcement. We will pay them what they deserve to be paid. The law enforcement officers in the state of Florida are some of the lowest paid law enforcement officers anywhere, and I mean those who are state law enforcement officers. When you compare their salaries to the local law enforcement agencies, they have fallen behind. We'll increase the pay for them, to pay them a competitive wage, but we will also make certain that our law enforcement gets back to focusing on the law enforcement needs, the public safety needs of the state of Florida as one of the primary goals, because right now, many of these state law enforcement officers have been redeployed to not just answering those calls for traffic crashes and other enforcement needs on the highways of the state. They've been redeployed to other things, to immigration and customs enforcement. That is a role of the federal government and not necessarily a role that the state and local law enforcement should be the priority place to go for the resources and the personnel to be able to carry out federal immigration enforcement. What it will look like is that we will certainly have in place funding to help support the payment of the staff that needs to do that, but I would look at redeploying our personnel back to the primary focus on the state of Florida, and let the federal government take care of more of the immigration and customs enforcement than what they are presently doing.
We know there's been a lot of discussion in Orange County about the jail as well, and are you concerned about the onus that is being put on local governments to house many of these detainees?
Yes, I'm concerned about it. The state of Florida passed a new law now, because I've been a certified law enforcement officer for about 45 years. I'm still a certified law enforcement officer, and I do the training. I have something to compare it to, is what I'm saying here. But what we are seeing now is we're seeing where these local law enforcement officers are not being adequately trained in the immigration and customs enforcement. We're seeing now where the state law enforcement officers aren't being adequately trained. They have reduced the number of hours required now for the training of even the federal immigration and customs enforcement officers. I believe that there's a time now to redirect some of this. There are unintended consequences on the local governments, because we passed a law that said that the local governments must use their best efforts to support immigration and customs enforcement. Again, this is an unfunded mandate. My jail here in Orange County, we're one of the few counties in the state where the sheriff does not run the jail. The county runs the jail and pays those costs. And we've been forced to have to take in the ICE detainees into our local jail. And we have, for the last several decades, had an intergovernment agreement with the federal government through the U.S. Marshal Service to house federal inmates. And we had a particular cost reimbursement that had been negotiated. We have taken a look at that now, and we have been trying to get the federal government to increase that average daily per diem that they pay us. And to the tune in the last 12 months, it has cost Orange County taxpayers an additional $330,000+ that we have not been reimbursed for because of the additional demand on our local jail. And I'm concerned about capacity. Jails are expensive to build, they're expensive to manage, they're expensive to operate, and we need reimbursement. Otherwise, if we don't get adequate reimbursement, now that's pulling from our discretionary budget that we could be using to address other significant local issues like dealing with homelessness, dealing with housing affordability, improving the efficiency of our transportation system. That's another area that people complain about. Traffic congestion in a growing state with tourists coming in, traffic congestion is terrible. And those are things that people here want us to address. How are you going to address these issues? And that's what I wrestle with as a mayor every single day. I'm elated to have the opportunity to wrestle with those issues on behalf of the entire state of Florida.
If you were to be elected governor, you still would likely have a heavily Republican-controlled legislature. How, as governor, would you work with them, and how would you govern?
Let me say this. What the legislature will look like, we don't know. I do believe that we're seeing some movement in terms of the politics of the state of Florida. Whether or not the Democrats are able to flip the House or the Senate remains to be seen. But because the governor is the CEO for the state, has veto authority, the governor has great influence on the legislature. And so I would certainly use the breadth of my authority to bring some balance. Like, if you really talk to most Floridians, they will tell you that we're out of balance. Whenever one party controls absolutely, then you don't get the best results on behalf of all of the people. So I'm running because I do want to bring some balance back in the authority, the leadership here within the state of Florida. I would be the only person elected in history who would have served with titles of being mayor, sheriff, and chief of police. Now, there was one person elected historically who had been serving as a sheriff and a mayor, and it was a former Florida Attorney General, Bob Buttersworth. He had the opportunity to be a sheriff and a mayor before he got elected to the statewide office of Attorney General. I know that because he shared that history with me. But when he talked to me about it, I said, that's an interesting little-known history fact. But having served in 3 of those roles, chief of police in Orlando, Orange County sheriff, and as Orange County mayor, that would be somewhat unique. But I think that experience is what makes me somewhat uniquely qualified to be governor of the state of Florida, because I understand the issues that are most important to working class people.
Before we're almost out of time here, I want to just ask you a couple lighter questions for us to get to know you. I'm just curious, when it comes to your campaign playlist, what would you say is at the top of your campaign playlist right now?
Well, the top of my playlist is really fundraising. Okay, you can't run statewide without having the funds to do so. The first quarter that I was in the race, I was only in the race for about 55 days. I launched on November the 6th, and so 55 days in, it was a short quarter for me. So I'm excited about how much money we raised, but we need to raise more money. And hence, I say if you want to support me financially, go to jerrydemingsforgovernor.org. jerrydemingsforgovernor.org. I'll put in that shameless plug today. But we're traveling the state, and so I'm going to continue touching people throughout the state of Florida. That's top of my playlist. Get out and get amongst the people and talk with them. Listen to what they say is important to them.
All right, and quickly here, your go-to meal the night before you got a big maybe campaign event the next day.
Before I have a campaign event, my go-to meal, I like seafood.
Okay, well, plenty of good options for that around here.
Yes.
Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings, Democratic candidate for governor. We appreciate you coming in and sitting down with us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
You've been watching Fox 35 News Plus.